I hope y'all haven't forgotten about Travis Etienne, because if you have, I'm going to remind you of why he is so important to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I'll do it in just a second.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, everybody? Thank you for joining me, Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. Reminding you also, we are free on our YouTube page. You can subscribe for free at the Locked On Jaguars YouTube page, and then wherever you get your podcast every single day, audio-wise, make sure you tap in and you don't miss an episode. Shout out to our everydayers, the everydayers that make this podcast possible and also make it so much fun with the comments on YouTube as well as everywhere else. We really appreciate you. And hello to any new listeners we have. Thank you very much for joining us here on the Locked On Jaguars podcast. Travis Etienne. Yeah, he's still a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars, right? Everybody's so excited. I call it having this new car smell. You know what I'm talking about? You love your car. Maybe it's in the shop, or maybe you had to get a bigger vehicle because you're traveling, or you just don't want to put miles in your car, and you rent a new car, man, and it smells so good. That new car smell makes you believe that, well, that's the only one you got. You're enjoying it so much. And the new car smell in this situation would be Tank Bigsby and Calvin Ridley, two players on offense that I believe are going to help this team tremendously, right? It's all everybody's talking about. Good. I understand. Talk about them, man. Talk about them. But I remember a couple of years ago when the Jacksonville Jaguars were the slowest team in the NFL, and the former coach wanted to add speed. So he drafted a fast running back who he had watched a lot in college be a dominant player, right? And everyone was like, I get the Trevor Lawrence pick, but why are we picking a running back when we have so many needs? At that time, even though positional value-wise, things may not have been what the fans wanted, I understood it a little bit. I understood that what the Jaguars wanted and needed was explosiveness. They just didn't have any. They just didn't have any. Wide receivers, and then they spent all day. When Etienne got hurt, now go back now. Remember when Travis Etienne got hurt against Detroit in the preseason, and he had a Liz Frank injury, and he was out all year. You should have saw, like, every week it'd be a new dude on the sideline, and we wouldn't even know who's number 15, who's number 83, or they were going out scouring the waiver wire, if you will, to add speed. It's like anybody. I don't care if you ran track in high school. You look like you might have got picked up in week 8 here in Jacksonville. That's just what they were doing. The coach was so, and I'm going to use this word, rudimentary, like surface level, just wanting to get speed so bad. He didn't have any nuance about it. You didn't even have to be functional speed. It's like anybody that cat recruited over the years that had any speed, they had an opportunity. I was surprised Percy Harvin didn't get a tryout. I'm dead serious. But I just remember that. And I remember Travis getting hurt. And then I remember coming to training camp the next year when both him and James Robinson were coming back off of injuries. And I just recall seeing him in training camp. And when I saw him in training camp, something told me it's like he is different. And when I watched the way that Doug Peterson was a part of the staff that used guys like Bryant Westbrook in Philly, I said, that's what they're going to do. That's what they're going to do. They're going to put the ball in his hands in space, be very, very, very creative with their play calling. Yeah. So now, I'm sorry, somebody just text me real quick, something that's incredibly funny. I'm got to turn this phone away. I told them I was recording. But listen, now that the Jaguars obviously have their quarterback of the future, and by the way, yeah, he is better than Justin Herbert, and anybody that thinks he isn't, you can think that all you want to, but stop trying to convince people that Trevor Lawrence ain't better than Justin Herbert. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. So there's your look ahead and your tease to tomorrow. We're going to talk about Trevor Lawrence and why people can't get it through their thick head that there's just some people that believe he's better than Justin Herbert and a few other people on that list. But getting back to now, ever since midway through last season when the Jaguars at the trade deadline traded for Calvin Ridley, everybody's been going crazy about Calvin. And you should. Calvin Ridley is a very, very good football player. Great, right? Obviously, Christian Kirk and Zay Jones performed above the expectations of a lot of fans and a lot of people that criticized them, their signing here in Jacksonville. But we really don't talk about Travis Etienne and what was, in my opinion, his quote-unquote rookie season and how good he was. And everyone always says the one thing we talk about in the press box a lot is, man, it looks like when it does now. And the only explanation I can think of for what I'm about to say is that he's not running behind his pads as much as he's running behind his legs. And he's a guy who's looking to hit the home run every single time he gets the ball, and he's gone, and then he gets clipped, and it just looks like he never braces for it. He never anticipates the contact. He just looks like he's running, and all of a sudden the sprinkler catches him, but really the sprinkler ain't a sprinkler. It's another guy that weighs 250 pounds, and it seems like he always just jars. And anybody that's watched the games, the Jaguar games, you know this. He gets jarred, and it's almost like everything. I'm almost expecting like pads to be flying everywhere with the way he gets hit. So you started to get the feeling that they needed somebody else, right? And they needed somebody to complement him, and they needed somebody with physicality. And they got that guy in Tank Bigsby. The spacing that is going to be created, which is something that we're going to discuss here, by having Calvin Ridley, who can eat the entire route tree up, he can stretch the field. All of these things you would think would lead to me to think that he's going to have less production because he's going to have less opportunities. I'm going to tell you why I disagree. I think this guy who swings for the fences and is a home run hitter every single time he runs the ball, guess what I think is going to happen? I think they're going to rest him enough with Tank Bigsby taking a lot of those inside carries. So when he does get into the game, the defense is going to be a little bit more worn out, and he's going to pop those home runs. He's just going to be a home run specialist, right? I also believe that because Calvin Ridley is going to create spacing along with the other two wide receivers that will be playing a bunch, Zay Jones and Christian Kirk, and Trevor Lawrence is so good at what he does. And, oh, by the way, he has a getaway car too. I think these holes in the defense are going to open up a little bit. And I think the fact that he is such a home run hitter, and some people might consider it one-dimensional, what's going to happen is Travis Etienne is going to be just happy to do what he always does. That means get one-on-one matchups, look for the home run, and I think he is going to be a chunk yardage, chunk play king for the Jacksonville Jaguars. An example. Now, this is a different example because the guy I'm going to mention didn't start last year, and he's probably going to start when he gets healthy. What was Tony Pollard in Dallas? It seemed like every time Tony Pollard touched the ball, he got 8. And if he didn't get 8, he got 30. Whether it was running or catching, he popped those plays because Zeke had this wear him down effect, even though Zeke was the starter and Tony wasn't. Tony played just as much or more than Zeke. And then they had CeeDee Lamb on the outside who could eat the route tree up, and that created gaps in the defense. And the fact that Dak can also scramble. That's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I think Travis Etienne will have less touches but more impact because of his home run ability, because it's going to be cool to take those home run chances because now you don't also have to be the guy who just is the wear the defense down guy. That's Tank Bigsby. And by the way, Tank has a getaway car also. He can take it the distance. The Jaguars are going to be extra, extra explosive. So I want to talk about team speed and why it's not about drafting one guy or going out and having a weekly tryout for like the Jamaican bobsled people who can just have athletic. That's what it felt like. It just felt like every week they was like, man, we need somebody. It was almost like a walk-on situation here. And how you approach team speed and why it's so important to have functional speed. And I'll talk about all the fast guys the Jaguars have and how they've transformed their lineup. And then in segment 3, I'm going to talk about some things that Travis Etienne absolutely needs to improve in order for him to reach his full potential, because I don't think he's flawless or a perfect player, but we'll discuss all of that here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars. First, I got to let you know about Built Bar and Built Puff. I used to tell you all the time to go to built.com, but now got some local places I can tell you where you can go get it. If you love the best tasting protein bar you ever had and you're looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want all those sugars and calories and all of that stuff, then you need to make sure you tap into Built. Because if you're like me, you want healthier snack choices, but you don't want your hands all messed up, and then you don't want your belly keep getting big, but you love 100% real dark chocolate. Well, Built has done something. They've managed to only have 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, but a whopping 17 grams of protein for you, and it tastes so great. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club while you shop there. Go into the pharmacy section and ask for Built Bar, and you can get a 4-bar box. If you're like me, you want to eat a little bit more than that, go to Sam's Club, and you can get a 13-bar box. That's right. Walmart, Sam's Club, or even still at Built.com. You can go check it out for all the changes and all the things that pop up every single day. Make sure you tap in to Built.com, Built Bar, Walmart, Sam's. All right, rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars. Talking about Travis Etienne, man. I got a weird noise. They always start doing stuff when I'm starting to record. But talking about Travis Etienne, we thank you for making us your first listen here. We thank you for joining us every single day, being an everyday here on Locked On Jaguars, because it is your team every day. It's also your team when they add new players, and they added new players in Tank Bigsby and at running back, and then they added Calvin Ridley. Added a couple of more pieces and more players. Got a real good tight end who can be sort of a blocker and a pass catcher and an H-back. I'm going to tell you what that does for the run game too. So normally when you go to a 2 tight end package, in the past, the Jaguars have had one guy who's a designated pass catcher, another guy who's a blocker, right? It was Chris Manhertz and then Evan Ingram, or before that, Chris Manhertz and Dan Arnold or whoever. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a tell, right? When you see a dude that can't catch or that doesn't catch very often, what happens is the defense knows what he's in there for. He's a glorified offensive lineman, right? And Tom Coughlin used to say this all the time, like about a move tight end. He said, well, I'll put a move tight end and I'll just put another running back. Another wide receiver out there. Why would you have a dude out there running routes that's not as good at running routes as the other guy? So I think if you can compare it to poker, what having a piece like the young kid Strange that they picked, the second round pick out of Penn State, what that does is it takes your tails away. If he's a guy that can block, but he can also shoot the seam or hit a nice crossing route or get out in the flat and catch the ball and is a load to tackle, that's another thing that the defense has to worry about. They because the one thing that the defensive coordinators worry about, big plays, because you can play well all game and then give up big plays and then lose. You can give up 3 big plays and lose the game, even though you played well for 67 other plays. The other thing they worry about is this methodical moving of the sticks that demoralizes the team, right? So the one thing that we love about Travis Etienne is he has that big playability. He has the big playability that we haven't seen around here for a long, long time. And he has the ability to do it and make it happen. Like he'll make a dude miss or run through an arm tackle. And with that, those high knees, he gets those high knees moving. Like last year, there was one game where he was on the goal line. They gave him the ball. He took it out to the 15. They gave it to him again. He came around the right end for 30. He was at midfield just like that in 2 plays. And it's just like, when you see something that you haven't seen a lot around here, and and you start to get used to it. But then there were other games where he was trying to get loose and couldn't. But then there were some other games where he might have 15 touches and only have 50 yards from the line of scrimmage. And then all of a sudden, bang, he pops one for 35. And statistically, it looks like he had a pretty even keeled day when really he was getting stopped a lot. The one thing that I will tell you that I think will go away this year is knowing exactly what the Jaguars are going to do when they're about to do it because of the personnel that's on the field. I don't think they have any tails. I think they're versatile. I think with the additions of all of the guys that they have, it's going to create a situation where it's truly, truly going to open up everything. So team speed is not as much about, in my opinion, is how fast guys can run, but how fast they function as football players. Jerry Rice gave the 49ers team speed, but he was a 4'6" wide receiver. The Dallas Cowboys had team speed. Michael Irvin and Emmitt Smith, neither one of them were burners, but they played fast, and their linemen had quick feet. So when you talk about team speed in football, you don't just talk about, like, let me give you a boxing analogy. Some guys are real fast, but they're inaccurate. So what good is it for you to be able to swing your hands real quick, but you don't know what you're hitting? Whereas other guys, they're fast, but they're a little bit slower than that guy, but they're deadly accurate when they swing their punches because they know exactly what they're trying to hit. So it's the same thing with team speed here. It's not about getting one guy that's a home run hitter, which I hate talking about Urban, but I love to do it when I'm picking at him because that's exactly what he took of it. Like I said, it was rudimentary. It's like, okay, we need more team speed. Just get fast people. It's not that simple. The Jaguars, though, have managed to get fast, quick, twitchy people over the last 2 off seasons and be able to have functional, tough football players at the same time. You blend that in with a quarterback that I think is the cold-hearted truth and sitting right near that top 5, and it's a dangerous, dangerous thing to have. It gives you the ability to take advantage of mismatches. It gives you the ability also to score quickly. It also gives you the ability to come back from behind. And we saw that last year where that was absolutely necessary in like 4 games down the stretch for the Jaguars in the second half of the season, where you never seem to be out of it because you have the ability to get big plays quickly. So now that they have this depth and they have more of it, there's going to be things like the spacing that's going to be created because Calvin Ridley's such a deep threat. The ability of Zay Jones and Christian Kirk, along with Jamal Agnew, we're not going to forget about him. The ability to them to run laterally, just like they run vertically, and horizontally, rather, just like they run vertically, as well as the end of the round, the jet sweep, even the motion, the fake, how it holds people in place. And then you dump the ball back over here, and the dude had to freeze, and now he can't get to where he needs to go. So you're going to possibly see an uptick, a serious uptick in the ability of the Jaguars to get chunk plays and to put the ball into the hands of Travis Etienne. This is why I believe that even with less carries, I believe Travis Etienne is going to have a bigger impact because he may touch the ball less, but I think he may score more touchdowns and have more yards and have a bigger yards per carry. This is one of those things where I think this dude might legit average 5.5 yards a carry, maybe even 6 yards a carry. I do. I honestly do. We've seen it with Alvin Kamara early in his career. We saw it with Tony Pollard last year, where it seems like every single time they touch the ball, and almost like Aaron Jones a little bit up in Green Bay, like every time they touch the ball is a home run waiting to happen. He may have the impact that everybody think Bijan Robinson going to have this year in Atlanta, even though I think Bijan is also a very good player. All right, so things that Travis Etienne needs to improve on in order to live up to that vast potential that I keep bringing up. I'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, running it down, talking about Travis Etienne here in segment 3. We're going to talk about Trevor Lawrence tomorrow, so make sure Trevor Lawrence versus whoever, but mainly Justin Herbert. I'm gonna hone in on Justin Herbert because I saw a little bit of a beef on social media this morning with guys talking about that, and I'm gonna give you my 2 cents on it too. Things that Travis Etienne needs to improve on. First of all, I think he's going to have a huge year. I think he's going to have a big year. I think the new car smell of the new guys has probably clouded the memory of a lot of people. And I ain't saying everybody's forgetting him, but nobody's talking about Travis Etienne. And I think after the year he had last year, he needs to have more. There needs to be more conversations about what he's going to do to this team. I do like the additions. I think the additions make them tougher. I think Doug Peterson wanted to get to the point where he had a solid 2 or 3 man rotation where you didn't have a whole bunch of drop off, but you just had something different, right? You had guys that can be effective, but guys that can be effective in different ways. I'm a firm believer in the fact that, hey, man, listen, the more the merrier. And if this happens the way I think it's going to happen, I think Travis Etienne is going to actually benefit from having less touches, but also having a clearly defined role and then getting better opportunities. And they say it in basketball, better looks. And that's what I think he's going to get this year. I think he's going to get better looks. He's a draw play, screen, middle screen waiting to happen, and just constantly chunking up and down the field. I can see those high kicks and those high legs, things that he needs to improve. Ball security. Now, for somebody who's going to sit here and Google and say, well, he ain't fumbled that many times. Yeah, he recovered them. He bobbled the ball a lot, but he would always get it back, right? The schedule's getting tougher this year. We got to tighten that up a little bit. We really, that's the first way to make your coach lose confidence in you is to give up the football. And it'll ruin a game plan. You have a perfect game plan and fumble the ball, and you'll get beat because, well, the game plan consists on you having control of the ball, keeping the other defense on the field, and scoring points while wearing them down. You can't do that if you let the ball go, and then field position switches all the time. Taking hits, those hits. I want to see him absorb a little bit and basically anticipate those hits so that it doesn't always appear. It kind of appears like he's just running. They don't have clotheslines anymore, but in my old neighborhood when I was a kid, if clothes weren't on the line, you didn't see the line, and we'd be running, and it'd be like at what is it, dusk or dawn? When is it at late? When is it's like 6 o'clock in the afternoon and the sun's going down? That's dawn, I believe. Is it? Somebody put it in the comments. Which one is dusk and I ain't got time to be looking it up. Which one is dusk and which one is dawn? I ain't no cowboy, and I'm not a romantic, so I don't really know which one it is. But whatever it is, we used to run into those clotheslines and almost decapitate ourselves because we couldn't see the thin. So that's what it looks like when he's running, man. It just looks like he's running, and all of a sudden, somebody just out of nowhere just jumps up out of the grass and hit him with a baseball bat, or trip him. He literally looks like a car accident every time he gets hit. So I want him to be able to absorb those hits so that maybe it doesn't feel as bad as it looks, but even if it does, he needs to make sure that doesn't happen, because I'm tired of cringing whenever I see him get hit. The other thing is pass pro. I don't necessarily know if it's a problem, but I do know in some critical games when I thought he should have been on the field, because outside of Trevor Lawrence, he was their second best player on offense, in my opinion. He wasn't there. They had Jermichael Hasty out there to double down on that point. They re-signed Hasty, but they still used the 3rd round pick on Tank Bigsby. So that tells you why the hell was the dude that's going to probably be your 3rd running back, why was he on the field in these critical moments against Kansas City, like late in the 4th quarter? The only thing I could guess, because nobody said anything about injury, is that they were just a little bit nervous about his pass protection in obvious passing situations. So they needed to get somebody else into the game. If that's the case, that cannot be a glaring weakness. You have to make sure, because now your tail comes back. If you're in the game, they know you're going to run it, because they know you ain't going to sit back, or they know you're going out for a route, and they know what coverage to be in, because they know you ain't going to block nobody, because you can't if you can't pass pro. Finally, I want them to pick his spots. There's sometimes you're going to get 5 yards. Go ahead and get the 5 yards, dude. Just get the 5. And there's sometimes you're going to get 20. Now, I know overweight 53, almost 54-year-old ain't sitting here telling a fast running back who could run backwards faster than I could run forward. I know I'm not sitting there telling that dude how to run the football. No, I'm just echoing what I've heard other greats say. Other greats says everything can't be a home run. Every punch in boxing can't be a knockout punch. You got to kind of set guys up. And every run is not going to be a touchdown. Just not going to be. You could try to make it one, but to start understanding and getting that distinction of knowing exactly what he has and what he doesn't, when to run out of bounds, it's going to prolong his career. It's also going to help the Jacksonville Jaguars mightily. So the new car smell is fine, but don't forget about old Reliable that you have, even though Reliable ain't that old. He's only in his technically his third year, but body-wise, he's in his second season with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Stop forgetting about Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne is going to be a huge part of this team this year. We're going to talk about his old college teammate, the best player on the team, Trevor Lawrence, tomorrow, and why people are having such a hard time ranking him where he rightfully needs to be. Thank you again to my everydayers and to the new folks here at Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you tap in, subscribe on YouTube, follow wherever you get your podcast to make sure you get your episode every day. And thank you again for making us your first listen, because it's your team every day. Take care of each other. We'll see you tomorrow on Locked On Jaguars.